We hail our college alma mater, the hearse that's built upon the hill, with love for all she has taught us, traditions that we carry still. The gates stand always open, the trees all green upon the grounds, and when we look to Mercyhurst, there's no better to be found.
In 1926, the Sisters of Mercy founded Mercyhurst College on the south end of the city of Erie, Pennsylvania. The Hearst upon the hill would grow and expand in its first 60 years, and in 1986, it would expand its established athletics program to include hockey. It would begin as just a club team, playing in the non-hitting Erie Industrial League, but it would grow so much bigger than that. 4 people have been around for nearly the entire duration, and they are the holders of this as-yet untold history. They are John Leisering, an Air Force veteran who had plenty of experience with hockey and hockey broadcasting. Dave Leisering, his son, who would grow up with this team and go on to broadcast for it. Rick Gotkin, the coach for all but the inaugural season and the winningest coach in college history. And Michael Sisti, the first and only coach of women's hockey at Mercyhurst. They will guide us through the history of Mercyhurst hockey. Earned prominence.
My dad was the athletic director back in the mid to late 80s, and he is actually the one that started the hockey program here.
And I was really the only person in the athletic department at the time who knew a great deal about ice hockey. Dr. Bob Ciesick, who was teaching in the business department at the time, and then all of a sudden in '87 there was a move to make the men's hockey program a varsity program.
He was a guy that, was a Buffalo, New York native. He always liked hockey, and he was kind of the guy that really started the whole idea of hockey and sold the idea of hockey to the administration back then. And they decided to move the hockey program from a club status where they played like 15 or 16 games to a varsity status. The club team back then, like I said, the year before I got here, a bunch of students started hockey, and they got the administration to buy them jerseys and socks and things like that, and it was kind of ragtag kind of stuff. They had a local guy in town that come over and help and whatnot. But the players back then, along with Dr. Bob Ciesick, really pushed the administration to, hey, let's do this serious. We need a real coach, and we need to do this and that, and that's really what happened with the varsity. But
the trustees approved it. We hired a local coach by the name of Fred Lane, who worked for the city. I believe still works for the city. He should be just about the retirement stage right now. He worked in the water department. We hired him because he had hockey background. He coached at Gannon, club program there. He had some hockey credentials. I mean, he was well known in local circles. And it made it kind of an easy choice to get the program off on the right foot. Once it became apparent that the interest was there and the support was there to take it from something other than a glorified club team or an industrial league team, and we needed someone full-time. Fred did not want to give up all his years of service to the city, which is totally understandable, to take it to a legit varsity program. 1987-88, we played a 23-game schedule. It was kind of a mishmash between club and varsity teams, and to his credit, Fred directed the team to a 16-7 mark. He was very fortunate. He had some very, very good early players, backstopped by a young man by the name of Gary Bowles, who was the goaltender.
Gary Bubba Bowles, a great kid, marine biologist, living in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. Very bright kid, obviously. Great kid, great leader, and a very good goaltender.
Gary Bowles was probably the biggest guy we had on our team in terms of size, and he was our goaltender. But he was great. He was, he kept the guys in the games, and he still, I think he won 56 or 57 games here in 4 years. He was a great goaltender, and he's in the Athletic Hall of Fame too.
You know, he was a big part of our success. Was a great leader for us. You know, and back in the early days, you know, not much has changed. You know, you want to have a good program, you need a good goaltender, and you know, he was no exception. But I think the thing that really stood out about Gary was that he was a great leader. You know, the guys listened to him. He was a great bridge between me and the team, you know, and you know, I met quite often with him and some of the other upperclassmen, and we were always on the same page, and it worked out well, you know, and I still keep in touch with Gary. He's a great kid.
So the program did well. The interest was there. The enthusiasm was there. Bob Ciesick was the driving force really behind elevating the program to a varsity status. A complete varsity program, not just combination of club and varsity games. And so in '88, when Fred decided that he had to devote the majority of his time to the city, so he didn't give up the years that he put in, he wanted to get tenure or whatever the term is, he bowed out gracefully, and we began a search for a full-time hockey coach. We narrowed the search to 3 and eventually chose Rick Gotkin.
Well, you know what? I was pretty much born and raised in the New York City area, Brooklyn, and then left home, as a lot of young hockey players do, to continue my development as a player. Left home to go to Canada, played hockey in Canada for a couple of years, played hockey in upstate New York for a couple of years, you know, just different scenarios. Ended up in a junior college at Canton, SUNY Canton in Canton, New York for 2 years. Then went on to Brockport State, where I finished my undergraduate. And after Brockport State, I was an assistant coach at Brockport. Then I went to Holland, where I was a player head coach. And then after Holland, I went over to Scotland, where I was just a coach. Scotland and the United Kingdom. Then after that, I came back and I started my assistant career as a coach at Rensselaer at RPI, and then was hired at Mercyhurst from RPI.
I actually started along with Rick. I was actually the stick boy for the team. Being the stick boy was fun. Rick actually let me sit on the bench. I had to have the helmet on and everything, but you know, it was a lot of fun. I used to sit on the end of the bench and sat on the water bucket for the first couple years, and you know, the guys would pat me on the helmet when they came on and off the ice or whatever. So it was great. It was a lot of fun hanging out with you know, college kids, and you know, they were kind of my you know, role models and idols, and you know, being that young, it was just great to hang around.
Well, when I first came in, I was excited and really thought that I would be here for a year or two, and then I'd move on to the next bigger, better thing. And then 23 years later, here I am, and I thought it'd be good to have some head coaching experience for a year or two. You know, wasn't really sure where this whole thing would go. You know, but after getting here and spending some time, I quickly realized that I'm involved in a gem. You know, this is going to be as big as I want it to be, and that's what happened.
As I said, we went 16-7 the first year. Once we got into a complete varsity schedule in '88-'89, his very first year, we went, I believe, 11-16-1. And people say, well, what happened? You know, and nothing happened. That's the price one pays when you start up a program and you start playing teams, very, very good teams who've been around for quite a long time, the RITs and the Canisiuses and the Brockports and the Geneseos and the schools of that ilk who'd been around for a long time. We were competitive.
Yeah, it was a challenge. I mean, our home ice officially was the Tullio Arena, where the Erie Otters play, as you know, downtown. The problem is, you know, in college athletics, scheduling is years in advance. And you know, quite frankly, the truth is that we were the fourth or fifth in line as far as attendance goes at the Erie Civic Center. So, you know, the pro hockey team back then, East Coast Hockey League team, the Erie Panthers, was the main tenant. So they had they got whatever dates they wanted, and rightfully so. And then the circus and Andy Williams' Christmas concert, and well, at the end of the day, it was very hard to schedule. You know, because if you did, there was a chance that, you know, somebody might come in and you get preempted and whatnot.
We ran into a problem. Anytime Tullio could get something else in there would generate a heck of a lot more money than 300-400 people that Mercyhurst would bring. we got bumped. And if you're going to run a legitimate, respectable, professional program, that can't happen.
There were a couple occasions where we did have home games at Meadville, which was a partially outdoor rink as well at the time. We played Wisconsin River Falls there a couple times. They actually came here. It held about 1,000 people, so it was, nothing great. But, the Meadville people would handle all everything to get everything set up and things like that. But we played Wisconsin River Falls a couple times there. We played a couple other teams there. We probably had, all told, probably 5 or 6 home games there. We also had a couple home games at Fredonia. So it was, like I said, it was tough not having our own building, and tough getting home games. The team was actually called the Boys on the Bus was the nickname, because most of the time, 28 game season, they'd play 4 at the Civic Center. So it was ridiculous pretty much, but they kept winning. They won pretty much everywhere they went, and but the home games at Meadville and Fredonia, and it was never really, we always had to hop on a bus somewhere to get to where we were going, even down to the Civic Center. So
we got through it. It wasn't easy. Practiced every morning at 6 a.m. But the guys got used to it, and we did it, and we had a different identity, because we really had that us against the world mentality. We looked at some of these other programs, some of these bigger programs in Division III, and some very good programs in Division III, and they had their own rinks, and they practiced at 4 o'clock, and they traveled first class, and we traveled by vans. We took 2 vans, or 3 vans. One was an equipment van, and 2 vans had players in it. We also took a little mini bus, which is similar to the mini bus they have today, and 1 van, and we took it all the way from Erie to Plattsburgh, New York, which is 10 hours, 12 hours away, and we did that all the time. We took it to Fredonia also, and Buffalo, but, we took it all the time. But, back then, our guys paid for their skates and their sticks and, tape. All that stuff was a luxury, because we didn't have any of that stuff. And it took time. It took time to, what you see today, as you know, is a lot different than it was 20 years ago. A lot different. But, we evolved, and that's what really counts.
Eventually, Rick took the team to the Division III NCAA playoffs in '91. He had a young man there who was the captain of the team at that time, who he'd recruited, or his staff had recruited, from Winnipeg, Manitoba, by the name of Scott Burfoot.
Scotty was he was a great player. I mean, he was probably the best player that we've had here. He was a great kid. He always treated me, even though I was 15 years younger than he was like my best friend on the team. I mean, he was a great kid, and he'd lead our team in scoring every year. He'd lead the league in scoring every year. He led the nation in scoring a couple years. He was, every game he'd have at least 2-3 points. He'd score, 6 or 7 in a game a few times. He was unreal.
I think Scott Burfoot was clearly the first legitimate big-time player we had at Mercyhurst. And again, he came my initial year as I was at Rensselaer RPI recruiting, and he was a guy that we liked very much at that level. Things just didn't work out for him at RPI, and ended up at Mercyhurst, and he was the real deal. I mean, Scott Burfoot playing for us today would be one of the best players on our team today. I mean, he was that good. Went on to play in the American Hockey League and East Coast Hockey League and do some great things. So
he also played in the East Coast Hockey League. He actually played for the Erie Panthers for a couple seasons. He led the East Coast Hockey League in scoring the year he was in Erie. He had around 100 points. I think he was like 98 or 99, but he led the league in scoring. And he just carried on his success into the pro days, and he finished his career. He's still the all-time record holder in points, 290. And I don't think that record is ever going to be beaten.
But he was really the first kid that we had, that was people looked at from across the country and said, wow, that's a real real hockey player right there. You know, he wasn't just okay and he wasn't good. He was off the charts good, and really helped give us credibility and really gave us a chance to win every night.
Like I said, he was like my best friend on the team. He would treat me with a lot of respect. Like I said, even though I was a dozen years younger than he was or whatever, but I'd sit with him on the bus when I'd go on the shorter trips, and he was like a big brother to me, really. And he was the first hockey player elected to the Mercyhurst Hall of Fame here, and deservedly so, because he was just a great player, but even better person.
Troy was pretty close to Scott, but again, another one of those legitimate guys.
Troy Winch, he was in a sense a lot like Burfoot was. He only played 3 years here, and I'm still waiting for him to make it to the Hall of Fame, because he absolutely deserves to be in. He was a great player, and if it wasn't for Burfoot being on that team, he would have been the go-to guy and the guy everybody talked about.
These are two Western Canadian kids coming to Erie, Pennsylvania, which is kind of unheard of back then in college hockey. But Troy, much like Scott, gave us instant credibility. Great offensive threat, great kid.
He was fantastic. He was probably one of the smartest guys we've ever had too off the ice. I mean, he was ridiculous. I forget. He was majoring in like biology or something and had like a 4.0. I mean, it was ridiculous. But
he's an accountant now in Vermont, and he did some great things for us. So
on the ice, I mean, like I said, other than Burfoot, and that was scary. Having Burfoot and Troy Winch on the same team. I mean, teams just didn't want to play us. But if it wasn't for Burfoot being on that team, Troy Winch he'd probably have his number hanging from the rafters, because he was fantastic.
Really, you look at whatever we have today in terms of buildings and prestige and success. It was really those guys, as that really, if they weren't able to do what they did in the 4 years they were here, we probably wouldn't have any of the stuff you have today.
I started to say Rick took the team to the NCAAs in '91.
And I might be getting ahead of ourselves here, but what really broke the camel's back and brought us the rink was being the number 1 seed in the ECAC playoffs and having to be the home team and play in Elmira, New York.
Absolutely. Elmira, it was a huge rivalry, Mercyhurst and Elmira. The guys hated going there, but that was always my favorite trip. I used to love going there because they would pack the place, and it held probably 4,000 people. It was a dome. It was the building was kind of shoddy, but it was one of my favorite trips, because they used to tie that in with Hobart.
Oh yeah, two of the best teams in it was the ECAC West back then was interesting. Let's see if I can get this right. RIT, us, Elmira, St. Bonaventure, Hobart, University of Scranton, and I think that might have been the 6 teams back then for a long time. So the 3 best teams clearly were always RIT, Elmira, and Mercyhurst. And not a lot has changed. But Elmira obviously is a very successful Division III program still. But we played a ton of games in Elmira, New York.
But Elmira was a huge rivalry. I mean, we used to have battles with them every year, and I remember the first time we played them, we weren't in their conference, and we absolutely got hammered traveling there. But as we got along and got better, got older, got in the conference, we used to have the games were always close, always a battle, whether they came here or whether we were there. But I used to go to a lot of the trips. The fans would actually throw stuff at Mercyhurst people, and I actually got hit in the back of the head once doing a game with a battery. So I mean, they were brutal people, but they loved their hockey there, and the games were competitive and always a battle, like I said. And
like I said, it really came to the forefront when we were the number 1 seed going into the playoffs, and then we had no place to play, and we ended up playing in Elmira, and then the very next week having to go back to Elmira because we got chosen to be in the NCAAs, and they were hosting in that point. So we had some memorable games, 2 overtime games, and or 2 games and a triple overtime game, and and all that made made for a good, healthy rivalry.
We beat Elmira 5-4, but at that time they had a best of 3 and a mini game, as they called it.
We had won on Friday, and then we blew a big lead on Saturday, where they had come back to win.
We lost the next game 7-6, as I recall. We had a nice 5-1 or 6-1 lead and couldn't hang on.
And then the third game was what they called a mini game. And what it was they would play right after the conclusion of the second game. It would be one 20-minute period. And that was the mini game. And whoever scored the most goals in that 20-minute period won the third game and moved on to the next round.
So you played Friday, you played Saturday, and then instead of having a whole full game on Sunday, if one team, if you split one game each, you took a 20-minute break and you played a mini game on Saturday night, and that's actually what had happened, which really fueled this rivalry. And then we played the mini game, and the mini game was tied 1-1, I think, or 2-2. I can't remember what it was, but went into like triple overtime with the mini game, and Elmira ended up winning and going on to play in the Final Four for the Division III. But the mini game was an interesting thing because it was treated just like a whole another game, but it was only 20 minutes. So, what happened was, you could make changes to your lineup, you could dress different people, you could start different people, you could undress people, you could do whatever you wanted. It was a whole new game, but it was on the same night, and I think the reason the NCAA did that, well, for sure the reason the NCAA did that is to save money. You wouldn't have to spend another night overnight and meals and things like that. So
that was the first time we had made the tournament, and really the first taste of real success that Rick had, and he's built it up since then. So
people said, hey, just be careful you don't schedule yourself out of a job, and I said, I don't worry about that, but to get better players, you had to show them that you're playing better teams and that you have a serious commitment, and this is where we want to be. So our philosophy hasn't changed. We're going to open up at Michigan October 3rd this year. We're going to go up in front of 10,000 fans, and we're going to play the Michigan Wolverines in Ann Arbor at the Yost Arena, because that's what we do. And again, it's going to be tough. We might get our ears pinned back, but you know what? I think our program will be better for it. Someday, some way. It might be better the next week. It might be better the next month. It might be better the next year. And it might even help us get another player, but that's how we recruit and that's how we build our program. That philosophy has always been the same, and it's worked out pretty well for us. We don't have a kind of, as you know, because you follow us, we're never going to have a team that's going to win, 32 games and lose 2. It just doesn't happen. We play too good a schedule. I mean, there's a lot of coaches in lots of sports at lots of levels, that could run the table. It's called creative scheduling. You don't have to be real good to you guys could figure that out. I mean, if we wanted to win 30 games, I could, easily. And everybody'd say, hey, look how great they are. The bottom line is, we play the best teams we can, and we take our lumps, but I believe we're better for it. Yeah, they were tough, and again, it's, again, all of that stuff gave us credibility, John. That was the kind of stuff that, helped build our program. It was tough getting there. It was even tougher playing there. But again, it exposed our guys to, crowds of 10, 12, 14,000 people. For some of those kids, it really was as good as it got. For some of those kids, that was the best part of their hockey career, to be able to go to Alaska, play in front of 15,000 people, and irregardless of what the score was. And again, everybody wants to win. You do your best to win, but that's the kind of stuff that helped build the program, and that's the kind of stuff that spread to other recruits. Hey, we really want to come. We hear you guys play a great schedule. Yeah, boom. I'm not going to go there because you guys play a tougher schedule. I want to go, with you people. And that's the kind of stuff that helped build our program and spread the gospel. And, again, it's tough because people are going, gee, hey, they won 15 games and they lost 20. Ooh, they must not be good. Well, we're better than you think we are, And, again, we take our lumps every single year against the big boys. And it's no different today. It'll be no different next year, even though the gap is getting a little bit closer than Division III or Division I. But, again, we believe this makes us better.
And then finally, the trustees, with Dr. Sisik, Dr. Garvey, and myself, kind of jarring the inertia, and we got the trustees to agree to build a rink on campus.
When I came in, part of the thing that I wanted to do was get a rink built, and the way to get the rink, in part, was how we could generate revenue for our college. And I've basically said, well, if we build a rink on campus, and we have access to that, it's our building, obviously. We're going to bring in 25 varsity players, and I'll start a JV/club team, and all of those kids will pay something. So, back then, and even a little bit now, we were generating almost $500,000 in, tuition, room, board, fees, and everything else, which is pretty good. That's a pretty good investment. And the administration went, well, now, let me understand this, Rick, that if we build a rink, you can bring in 25 more guys, to play club hockey or JV. I said, absolutely. So the tough part was I was responsible for all that. I had to go to club team scheduling meetings in Ithaca, New York, and when there was problems, I didn't coach the team, and we've never really had any players move up or down between club or varsity. It just doesn't happen, But the reason, that was really the selling point was to get the rink built, and it worked out great, and we still have the club team.
And it went up in 91 and opened on December 8, 1991. I won't forget the game ever. Rochester Institute of Technology was our first opponent there.
I remember when we opened the Ice Center in December 8 of 1991. We played RIT. That was the first opponent in our building, and
the game was supposed to start at 2. I want to say it was a Saturday. I don't remember what day of the week it was, but Saturday sounds right. And full crowd, just waiting for. And RIT had a bus problem.
Their bus supposedly broke down on the way.
The phone rang, and RIT bus broke down, and game was delayed about 3 hours.
And the fans, the building was the most packed I've ever seen it, since I've been here. And there were fans everywhere, and they waited. They waited for RIT to show up.
It was a great day, and I can remember before the game being out putting the dasher boards up and doing all the little things that need to be done that we forgot to do, and and just remembered, and so it was a little bit hectic, but it was a very exciting, obviously proud day for all of us involved in the campus.
And that kind of took a little bit of the luster off things. The team that was chomping at the bit, to get on the ice and play their first ever home game, we ended up losing to RIT 5-4.
And that rink was built with, activity fees from students.
Students played a major role in getting that building erected with fees that they agreed to pay annually to make the building ultimately at some point in time debt-free.
That agreed for the next couple of years, I can't remember exactly how long, to up their activity fees by, $30 or $40, and a lot of that money went towards building the Mercyhurst Ice Center. Student government, David Murphy was the student government president. He also was a hockey player, which probably helped. But student government really, if they didn't have the support they had for this project, we wouldn't have the rink.
The building over the years has expanded, completely new dressing rooms now for men and of course women, which we added the women's program in '99. New offices for a number of the coaches there above the east side of the building there, above the concession stand area.
RIT's had success. They've been playing hockey at RIT since 1958. And they've won 3 Division III national championships, 2 Division II national championships. They obviously made it to the Frozen Four this year, Division I. It's a big time sport at RIT, and huge commitment for their program. And it's little things like the bus breaking down, whether it did or not. I've heard all kinds of stories since then, the stuff that lore is made of, but it just fuels that rivalry.
That is the one team, and Rick would probably tell you the same thing. That is the one team that year in and year out has our number. We just have trouble beating that team, whether we're Division III, Division II, Division I. For some reason, that is just the one team. There's always one. But
again, you had, through the ECAC West, you had 2 teams that were very competitive, 2 teams that had a great fan base back then, 2 teams that fans traveled a lot to each other's rinks, and all that fueled that rivalry. And at the end of the day, it really was two really good college hockey teams, that had a great rivalry.
After we moved to Division II non-scholarship in '93, he took us to the Division II National Championship playoffs with Bemidji State. And
the NCAA in the beginning had a Division III National Championship, a Division II National Championship, and a Division I National Championship. The problem is, in Division III, you can't give athletic scholarships. Division II, you can. Division I, you can. Okay, but Mercyhurst chose to play as we couldn't help the fact that we were a Division II school. Okay, we had no choice in that. Okay, but for us to get a schedule in the beginning, we promised that we would not give any financial aid based on athletics. We wouldn't give hockey scholarships. So that allowed us to play in the ECAC West against RIT and Elmira and Hobart, all these Division III schools. Okay, so at the end of the day, we would play in the ECAC playoffs. And then we'd play in an ECAC league, and we'd play out of conference games against Division I teams, other Division II teams, other Division III teams. Okay, and if our record was good enough, and again, it was very subjective because it was just a committee. It's not like today where they use a computer and the RPI and different RPI than Rensselaer, but but it was very subjective where a committee would sit around and talk about the merits of teams to go to the tournament. So if we earned it, we could play in a Division III playoff, but then for a national championship, we would have to play for Division II. So now when we played Division II, we played Bemidji State and Alabama Huntsville and Mankato and those schools all had athletic scholarships. We had none. Because if we gave athletic scholarships, RIT and Elmira and Hobart and Cortland and Fredonia and Oswego and Buff State and Plattsburgh wouldn't play us. And those are the teams that we had to play in pretty much our geographical footprint. So we chose not to give scholarships, and it was the right thing to do. So then we would qualify for Division II National Championship.
Kevin McKinnon was probably the one guy that we had in the history that would put the fear of God into opposing goaltenders. I mean, he was a sniper. He could score from anywhere. He was in terms of goal scoring, he was probably better than Scott Burfoot. Burfoot was a better playmaker. But McKinnon, I mean, he would have a breakaway at least once a game, it seemed. And he would score 99.9% of the time if he got behind the defense. There was no chance the goaltender was going to stop him. And, he had a tremendous slap shot. Like I said, I mean, he could score from the opposing goal line. I mean, it was ridiculous how good he was and how good of a shot he had. He had almost twice as many goals as assists in his career. I mean, he was just the goal scorer on the team, and like everybody else in the past, I mean, a great person off the ice too. He was great to hang around with. Fun to be around. But he was that one guy that, if the opposing goaltender saw him, you might as well just move out of the way because he was going to score. He was ridiculous in that sense.
In 1993, the team would rise to an as-yet unprecedented level and play for the NCAA Division II National Championship against the Bemidji State Beavers in Bemidji, Minnesota.
It was great, other than the fact got to go to Bemidji, Minnesota and play in front of their 5,000 fans, and they were a real good team. We played hard. They were better, but it was a great experience for our guys. They loved it, and we spread the gospel a little bit more, and the program grew a little bit more, and it worked out pretty well.
The Beavers would beat the Lakers in both games, winning the national championship. But Mercyhurst had tasted greatness. They had been on the cusp of being the best. Just 2 short years later, they would set a record of 23 wins, 1 loss, and 2 ties. This even better team would get another shot at Bemidji State in 1995.
The thing that stands out the most was the balance on that team. Like, it seemed like our leading scorer probably had about 40 points, which was back in the day pretty low for a leading scorer on the team, especially when you had Burfoot and McKinnon and actually our leading scorer, I believe, was Justin Proud, who was the team captain and a defenseman. So, that's unheard of to have your leading scorer a defenseman, but it seemed like 5 or 6, even 7 guys probably had at least 38 to 40, 43 points. Just a lot of balance on the team. Somebody was scoring. It was a different guy every night that was carrying the team, and that was something we hadn't had in the past. We used to rely on Burfoot and Mickey Keene and Troy Winch and Kevin McKinnon. Those guys were our scorers, and they relied on them a lot. But that year, like I said, the balance on the team was just amazing. I mean, most of the guys had double-digit points. There were very few, and it was the guys that didn't see action every game. Those were the guys that didn't finish with double-digit points. I mean, it was some different guy every night. The goaltending was fantastic that year. Scott Barber was the goaltender, and he would look brilliant some nights, especially in the past, before that year, and then some nights he would look, not real good. But that year he just played fantastic every game, and when you have that combination of balance on offense and great goaltending, it leads to a great year. And the one game, like I said, they took the night off was at RIT, but other than that, I mean, they were fantastic. That was a fun season. That was awesome. Well, actually, that was the year we hosted the Division II national tournament, and they used to, back in the day, Division II, they would only take the top 2 teams in the country. Mercyhurst was 1, Bemidji was 2, and we had played Bemidji 2 years prior to that in Bemidji back in '93, and got absolutely hammered. It was we lost 10-6 the first game, 5-0 the second game, and but we had them in our place. We felt pretty good. We were 23-1, 23-1-2 during the regular season. We felt real good having them come here. A long trip from northern Minnesota to get to Mercyhurst Ice Center, but Bemidji came in and beat us again. The first game wasn't close. I think the guys were a little nervous. Second game was just an absolute heartbreaker. We were up 4-1 going to the third period. We had to win to send it to that mini game for the game 3. They ended up scoring 3 goals to tie it, and like I said, we had to win. There was no overtime. If we tied, Bemidji was going to be the national champion. So we pulled Barber in a 4-4 game late in the third period.
I can remember people trying to figure out why we'd pull the goalie, tied 4-4. We ended up losing 5-4, but the tie didn't help us. We had to win, so we ended up pulling the goalie. They scored, and Bemidji again won the national championship.
It was probably the most heartbreaking time I had ever been around. I mean, we won the ECAC West, we won the regular season championship and the postseason tournament. Emotions were high. Fans were everywhere. I mean, it was packed, and Bemidji just came in and beat us, and it was disappointing. Very, very, very heartbreaking.
But it was great. The campus was abuzz. The rink was packed. Obviously it was a very good year. We had a very good team, and we played our usual schedule. We played a ton of ECAC West teams, and then we played the Fredonias and the Oswegos and the Plattsburghs, and those types of teams, and sprinkled in a few Division I teams, and like I said, it was a great year.
But all was not well. In a game against the Hobart Statesmen, a fight would break out on the ice. This fight would invite the ire of the Mercyhurst administration, and it had to be dealt with.
It was Hobart, and there was a fight on the ice here.
My dad, who was actually, he handled all the hockey stuff back then. But he was also the sports information director, and he had to go out of town for that day. So guess who was left in charge? It was me. So Ended up in the, I want to say the second period, just a giant brawl breaks out with Hobart. And we had a kid that was banging another kid's head off the ice, like picking it up and just, I mean, it was a mess. And, you know, I was in charge and I wasn't even going to school there. You know, I was still in high school, and you know I was in charge, but it was an absolute mess. And we had, you know, obviously you get the fighting majors and the DQs that go along with it, but there were a couple suspensions too, just for the kind of actions that were going on the ice. I mean, bouncing another kid's head off the ice is probably not something you should do. So that drew a suspension, you know, things like that. You
know, that player was suspended anyway, and, you know, it wasn't, you know, it really was not a big deal, but it was a big deal. And
we had a couple brawls before the Hobart game, but that was just, there was something about that one that just put it over the top, you know. I mean, everybody was involved. I mean, we had the athletic director, who was Pete Russo. He actually came out on the ice to try to, you know, try to help break things up and calm things down. And it was ugly. It was a mess. And
you know, it was unfortunate. You know, and you know, and again, I don't think there's any room for fighting in hockey, in college hockey. I don't like it personally. But it happens, and I think anyone who's been around the game knows it happens. And you know, and again, it was a fight between two guys. Never should have happened. It did. Nobody got hurt, thank God. No one got put in the hospital, thank God. You know, we didn't have the police department here, thank God. It was a fight.
The worst skirmish that has probably ever happened with the program,
and there was a parent in the stands who was videotaping the game, which often happens, and this parent sent the video to a vice president or president at Hobart, and then he then sent the video to the administration here. And
like I said, the AD's out in the middle of the ice trying to break things up, and
this parent was appalled by this fight, sent it to you know, the administration of their son, which was Hobart. You know, the Hobart coach was brought in and grilled by his administration. We were brought in and grilled by our administration. And, you know, the Hobart kid was suspended for more than he was supposed to be, and then our kid was suspended for more than he was supposed to be. And that was it. Kid came back and played and graduated, and that was it.
It was just ugly. It was ugly. Probably a day that Coach Gotkin remembers, but would like to forget. So.
In an unprecedented move, the entire team would do community service as punishment for their actions. It would not hold back the program, however, and shortly thereafter, talks of moving to NCAA Division I began circulating.
They were, Division II was practically folding. You know, there weren't enough teams to continue on with Division II.
Is the NCAA basically came back and said, hey, either you're Division III or you're Division I. Division III, there's no money. And if you're Division I, you can give money. So there's no more of that, you know, Alabama, Huntsville, and Bemidji State, and Mankato. You know, you guys are given athletic scholarships, but then you get a Mercyhurst in there that isn't given athletic scholarships because, you know, if they did, they'd be out of their regional league. You know, so they said, you know what, this is just too tough. And also, there wasn't that many. It was starting to dwindle because what happened was you had places like Maine and Lowell and Mankato that, just as an example, decide that, okay, well, we don't want to be Division III and not give money, so they transitioned to Division I. And by doing so, you lost more teams. So then the NCAA came back and said, well, wait a minute, we only have 7 teams, or whatever it was. How can we have a national championship with 7 teams? And they did for a couple of years, but since then they've gotten rid of the Division II national championship in hockey.
There was Mercyhurst, there was Bemidji, there was Alabama Huntsville, there were a handful of others, but it was always those 3 teams. It was Huntsville, Mercyhurst, and Bemidji that were always the top 3 in the country. There was nobody else, really. I mean, like I said, there were a handful of other schools that were playing Division II, but they really weren't any competition for those top three.
Division II was drying up around us, as we talked about earlier. You know, the national championship we knew was going away, so we couldn't compete for that any longer. There was more talk of the Division III schools aligning themselves together more. You know, the RITs and the Elmires, Hobarts and the Oswegos and whatnot, the Fredonias. And if that happened, how would that impact our schedule? But at the same time, you had Division I schools like Canisius, University of Connecticut, Army, Sacred Heart, Iona, Fairfield, Quinnipiac, that were like us. They were Division I schools. We were Division II school, but they were playing mostly Division III hockey. And they were like, hey, listen, what we have in common is that we're Division I schools that play Division III hockey. We're in the shadows of big-time basketball, football, whatever the case may be. Why don't we start our own league, a Division I league? And they said, yeah, that's a great idea, but we need more teams. So that's when they went out and they welcomed Mercyhurst and AIC and Bentley, and there's a few other schools that were in that mix.
And, you know, Division II was falling apart. And so the school had moved all of their sports to Division II. And you can't play down, you can't move back to Division III. So the only way to go was, you know, get rid of hockey because Division II was no longer going to be around, or move up to Division I. And, you know, with the success that Rick had, there was no chance that you know, they were going to drop the hockey program, especially, you know, building the rink, which at the time was, you know, 6-7 years old.
So that's how it was. I went to a number of meetings, you know, with athletic directors and whatnot, and it set up beautifully for us. And it was obviously, you know, if somebody would have told me then that we'd go into that scenario of Division I and we'd be the benefactors of not one, of not two, but 3 trips to the Division I national tournament, I would have said, you're crazy. That's never going to happen. And it did. You know, so it's been a great thing for us.
By the time we moved to Division I, Mercyhurst had definitely made a name for themselves. And, you know, a lot of players wanted to come here. They wanted to play hockey. They weren't, may not have been good enough to get a scholarship to go to a team in the CCHA or the WCHA or things like that. So Atlantic Hockey was or the MAC Hockey League at the time was, you know, if they wanted to play or try out for Division I hockey, the MAC Hockey League was the way to go. And, you know, Mercyhurst, I mean, it's a beautiful campus. The hockey program has had a lot of success in the past. Coach Gotkin has made a name for himself, you know, with the way he handles his team and, you know, the wins and losses. And, you know, a lot of the good quality players that weren't maybe quite at that level to, you know, play for a Michigan or a, you know, Ohio State or, you know, Wisconsin, teams like that. They came here, and we still got a lot of we had great assistant coaches that did fantastic recruiting, and, you know, a lot of good players came here and really didn't change anything in terms of wins and losses.
One of the coaches that helped Rick Gotkin for 6 years is now the head women's ice hockey coach. His name is Michael Sisti. He's a Canisius alum. He's in the Canisius Hall of Fame for his exploits in hockey.
I had plenty of options, decided to stay in Buffalo, being from Buffalo. I lived on campus the whole time, though. It's a pretty fun, exciting city, and it was just a wonderful experience, both with the people there playing hockey, being able to have the success I've had there. So I think looking back, it was an awesome choice. I got a great education, and then also they kind of pulled me back to start my coaching career there. And you know, coached there 3 years before coming to Mercyhurst, working with Rick, and all in all, it was a real good choice and worked out quite well for me.
You know, he just meshed very well. He just belonged here, I guess you could say. And you know, he did a great job going out and recruiting and getting, you know, high quality talent to come here. And
it was exciting. Rick's a great salesman, and it was an exciting time. They had a lot of things going, And again, it looked like a nice opportunity to come into a program that was making a very quick name for themselves and had a lot of potential.
Yeah, you know what? He actually applied for this job a year or two previously, and I didn't hire him. I hired Craig Barnett, who ended up being our athletic director for a spell here. And then I hired Mike Sisti, after that. And Mike, like, a lot of guys coming in, did a very good job for us. And, again, we had a lot of success. I think 2 or 3 national championship teams, appearances in a national championship. And, he worked hard, just like the rest of the guys that we had, and, did a very good job.
But Mike, he had that knack for bringing players here. His personality hasn't changed much in the 14, 15 years he's been here.
We came in, Rick was awesome. He gave me a lot of responsibility to handle as many things as I could. And again, it was another situation where I was seeing the fruits of my labor really pay off with the kids we were bringing in, the success the team was having. Moving the program up from Division II to Division I, and it was an exciting time. And after the first 2 years, Rick was nice enough to elevate me to the associate head coach title. And again, pretty much was able to work with all aspects of coaching and handle so many things. So I was certainly ready for any head coaching jobs that came up. And one of the years I was offered the UMass Boston job in Boston, and I had a real tough decision to stay or go. After careful consideration, decided to stay. I really felt we could make a push to win the Division II National Championship at that time here. We ended up hosting it against Bemidji and unfortunately lost in the finals to them. But I was glad we stayed. We made a pretty good run at it.
And Mike had a big hand in getting us there, because he did a lot of the recruiting and just brought great talent here. It was, and like I said, he just seemed like he belonged here, and he hasn't changed, obviously, with the success he's having with the women's program. So I mean, his coaching style is just it's amazing. So he fit right in.
And then shortly, a year or two after, the women's position came available, and it was another decision where I sat down. I gave it a lot of careful thought, and fortunately I've been making some good decisions here over the years that have worked out really well. The timing was nice, and that was a very good decision that I'm glad I made at the time.
And obviously, he wanted to be, I don't blame him, wanted to be a head coach. And one of the tough things in hockey, college hockey, there's only 58 schools that have head coaches in Division I hockey, and that's it. It's not like 158 or 258 or 500. There's just not a lot of jobs. So an emerging sport came around, women's ice hockey. Mercyhurst obviously saw the benefits of what's happened with the men's side. And again, let's get some more people in here and some people that can pay some money. And and they said, hey, listen, let's start women's hockey. And obviously he became the logical choice if he wanted, to be the first head coach. He's done a great job with the women's program, obviously. And basically, that's that.
They were talking about women's hockey for a couple years, starting a women's program, and just didn't know how Division I women's hockey was holding up. There aren't a ton of schools that offer Division I women's hockey, and there still aren't. There are like 35 or 40, but compared to Division I men's hockey, that's a low amount. So they weren't quite sure as to how it was going to hold up, but it kept building and kept growing, and Mercyhurst decided, hey, let's try a women's program here. We've had so much success with the men's team, let's see what we can do with the women. And they decided to offer Mike Sisti the head women's job.
Well, what was nice was the administration pursued me as the candidate they wanted, and what I did is I do oftentimes in my decisions, I got as much information as I possibly could. I looked at all the parameters, the pros, the cons. I wanted to make sure if I made the decision, I'd have no regrets of leaving a very good men's team that we put together, and I'd be able to do it with great pride and passion. And I did that, and a couple huge challenges were I didn't take the job till April, and in most cases that's when recruiting is done for the year. Also, when you do start a new team from scratch, usually the school will give the coaches a full year to recruit and plan and then start a year later. We were starting immediately that September. So what was unheard of was to get a locker room, equipment, a schedule, and a team in basically 4 months when recruiting's over was an impossible challenge that I don't think anyone expected us to meet. And we had a lot of trouble scheduling too, because people weren't sure we'd be able to even fill a team. And fortunately for us is we kind of found 6 to 8 core people out there that were still available, that the big boys all passed on, that ended up being huge character people for us, that built the program, made it what it is today, you know, with their pride, their character, their passion. And one of the challenges we did give that first team was, even though they're basically all freshmen, we had one goalie, Amber Natali, who was a 2-year transfer student, but other than her, everyone was a freshman. That, you know, our players wouldn't act like freshmen off the ice. They'd be respectful, mature in their behaviors. They'd do well in school. And on the ice, they'd play like a veteran team, even though they weren't. And those players really did a great job of doing that.
Played an exhibition game, the first ever women's hockey game against Penn State. Huge crowd for an exhibition game.
Yeah, it was fun and exciting. The hype was unbelievable. I think what was nice, it really started. We have a unique situation in women's hockey. We just have a great love on campus for our program and in the community and with the media. And I think it started day one. There was great hype for people to see women's hockey and see what it was all about. We had a very good crowd that night. Penn State, you couldn't ask for a better name of a school to come in with all the Penn State fans in Erie. So it was a natural draw. The only thing is Penn State was technically a club team, and we did, with especially those top 8-9 players of ours, we did outmatch them. And our girls were so excited to play, and the crowd was so excited to see women's hockey. Once we got rolling, the emotion in the building just kept things going, and it was a lopsided victory. But again, it was a key moment because people were just excited and intrigued with how well the women played and the pace of the game. And I think that thing got things rolling with us, with the fans and with the media.
And we ended up winning 17-0. And it was, I mean, you just knew. You just knew.
It was incredible. I think it all started with C.J. Ireland. She's in the Hall of Fame here. She was our 4-time captain.
You don't see that too often in the collegiate level, but C.J. Ireland.
She could just do anything. She was an unbelievable playmaker. Shauna Murphy was, I guess you could say, the goal scorer on the team. But C.J., she was a great passer. Just knew where everybody was on the ice. It was unreal. She'd fit a puck through whatever. I mean, it was unbelievable. There was traffic in front, and she'd find the only Mercyhurst player. She
too ultimately wore number 17, which kind of ironic with Scott Burfoot having worn that. But
she had some of her teammates come with her from the London Devilettes, but she was the glue that held that team together, and that made sure the players played with pride and played to a level. And again, we had great goaltending with Tiffany Ribble and Amber Natali.
Tiffany Ribble was his main goaltender.
Just a great person. Again, Tiff, what was awesome was a goalie that played well. She loved to have fun. She kept things really loose. And on a team, you need all sorts of people. And you know, she was usually the fun-loving Detroit kid that was mentally tough, and you know, again, you know, loved proving people wrong. You know, in those first 4 years, the games we'd play best in would be the games no one gave us a chance to win, because we had a lot of players that had that chip on their shoulder and wanted to make a name for Mercyhurst and for themselves, and they certainly did that. But Tiff was just a and still is just a fun-loving person. That's great to be around, happy-go-lucky, but when it's time to compete, she competes.
Amber Natali was the other goalie. So he had two goaltenders that split. It was pretty much 50-50 the time.
But I can remember an early article about the hockey program when they first started, and Natalie basically was quoted as saying, "You know what? We don't make any excuses. We don't plan to back down from anybody. We don't plan to take anything from everybody. Let's just go out and play and let the chips fall where they may." That kind of attitude.
So what was nice in the early years, we would get outshot maybe 40-20, but maybe steal some games occasionally. So having a great goaltending, even with that class, it set the tone that we've always had great goaltending here. We've fast become almost a goalie hotbed, that we've taken goalies that either no one's wanted or have been lightly recruited, and they've become All-Americans here. They've been on the Canadian U22 teams, U18 teams, some of the best goalies in the country. And our methods have just seemed to really work with that. But the goaltending was huge. We had a great defensive core with Randy Pilger and Jen Jeffrey leading the way, and obviously a nice sprinkling of forwards with CJ Certainly, Casey Gallo, Shauna Murphy, and a handful of others that did great things for us.
Yeah, it was something to behold. I'll tell you, it was amazing. Like I said, his schedule consisted of D1 and D3 programs. A majority of them were D3 the first year, just to get their feet wet, But he did sprinkle in some D1 schools, and they hung tough with them the first year. In fact, he beat a couple of them, I believe.
The thing that really made it 10 times tougher for us, which was an unfortunate, and it maybe slowed our progress. Even as much as we've accomplished in this short period of time, I think we could have done it a little quicker. There was never a clear plan or design, and by that I mean a lot of times a school may decide, again, we're going to start this sport, and we're going to have the full allotment of scholarships. We're going to break them down over the next 4 years in this manner. Here's all the money you have. It's equal to everyone else's money. Go get it done. We didn't do that. We're a small D2 school that kind of winged it step by step. We didn't have full scholarships, so we lost some great players even that first year we could have got, but we couldn't give them a full scholarship, so we couldn't get them. The school didn't want us to have near 18. They want us to have 5 or so. So we're trying to balance financial aid, small scholarship dollars. So at times we lost great players that actually would have looked at us and were intrigued, but we just couldn't afford them with the scholarship dollars that were out there. And those were constant fights. Same with our staff. We didn't have the full staff at full salaries. We started with no help, then one part-time, then the part-time had to go to full-time. Then we needed another full-timer, but they gave us a part-time. Then we had to get them the full-time. Then the volunteer coach. Then you had to get salaries up to, at least respectable levels. So there were so many extra fights and extra steps along the way that made things probably 10 times more challenging than they had to be. But we got it done. With the pride level, the work ethic, we figured it out. We clawed, we scratched. Maybe that was the genius plan of the administration. Who knows? But it did make things so much tougher on us. And the good news, though, is we battled through it. We always put a great product on the ice. Whatever we didn't have, we didn't let it hold us back. And we clawed and scratched. And then certainly what has been nice, though, is over the years, we've really made a lot of progress.
And then the second year, again, much like the men's program, they took a few lumps the second year. They stepped up the schedule, and they finished the only time, I believe, ever they finished under 500, 14 and 16 and whatever ties they had that year. Competitive, but just suffering through the building of a Division I program.
As the women's team was dominating in its first few seasons, the men's team was having its share of success in the new Metro Atlantic Athletic Conference, the MAC, in Division I hockey.
We were good. We knew what we had to do to compete. We knew, and it was easier because we finally had some scholarship money for the first time. And now that whole Division I label for our recruits was great. You know, so now we were just getting better kids, and like I said, it wasn't like we just started hockey yesterday and we came into the MAC and won. We've been playing hockey for a long time, you know, so it wasn't an accident. It wasn't any of that stuff. It was, hey, listen, we've been doing this for a long time. We have a good culture, you know, and we can compete, and that's what we've done.
Aubrey was, in terms of on the ice, he was the best goaltender we've probably ever had.
He was a great player. Again, he's back to that goaltender. You know, he was a great goaltender who, you know, single-handedly won us lots of games.
You just knew he was gonna make it somewhere. Yeah, he was amazing. He kept us in a lot of games with you know, better competition. You know, moving from Division II to Division I, and he was unbelievable, and. You know, he ended up getting, I believe, drafted by the Calgary Flames organization. First player, I want to say, that was drafted by, you know, an NHL franchise, and he deserved it. I mean, he was unbelievable. And never suited up for an NHL game. Never made it that far, but you know, he was knocking on the door several times. I think he made it to like their training camps a couple seasons, but you know, on the ice he was, I would say, hands down the best goaltender we've had. But
Peter Aubrey was our center of our universe, and you know, without great goaltending, you don't get a chance to be in those scenarios.
Off the ice, he was fine to hang around with. I mean, you know, most of the guys, you know, 99% of the guys were always great to hang around with. You know, he was my euchre partner most of the time, so you know, we played a lot of cards in the hotel room and things like that, and he was my euchre partner, so we used to beat most of the guys. That was a good feeling, and you know, just to know that he you know, made it that far and got drafted, and deservedly so. You know, just to know him was, you know, great feeling.
Probably one of the best players in that group was Louis Goulet, who was assistant coach for our women's team. You know, he was the catalyst of that team, I thought. You know, but you know, he was our captain, Louis. Louis was, as you know, he's just a little guy, but he competes like there's no other guy. I mean, he plays like he's 6'5" and 230 pounds because he's such a great kid. He's such a great competitor, and played great for us for 4 years.
Ryan Chauvin and Tackaberry were. They were similar in stature. I mean, they were two just big guys. Ryan Chauvin was kind of that guy that would stand in front of the net and, you know, block the goaltender's view from shots from the point and things like that, just create havoc in front of the net. Tackaberry was more of the scorer on the team. But Ryan Chauvin, I mean, he scored his share of points too, don't get me wrong. But
ended up in the championship game, was played at UConn on national television on the MSG network.
My buddy and I ended up doing covering the MAC tournament when it was held at Connecticut that year. Won the first game, Quinnipiac game. Quinnipiac was our big rivalry in the league. They were, you know, it was Mercyhurst and Quinnipiac that were the top two teams.
Quinnipiac and Mercyhurst were pretty much the best teams in the MAC back then, much like RIT and Mercyhurst and Elmira and Mercyhurst. Back then it was Quinnipiac and Mercyhurst. And that was our big rival. Great games all year, you know, win, lose, both teams pretty much 500.
And it was 5-5, and Mike Carter scored in the third. And with about 4 or 5 minutes to go, we held on, won 6-5. And it was probably the most excited I've ever been. I mean, it was great doing the game on the air, and you know, it was fantastic. And then, you know, we get back here, and you know, fans are waiting for the bus to show up, and
that was it. I mean, that was by far the best, you know, because the first one is always 2003 was great, 2005, 2001 was really the best one because it was the first one, you know, and that really put us on the map.
You know, the big send-off and the pep rally with, you know, Governor Ridge.
Well, he gave us a commendation, still hanging in the office.
Mayor Savacchio at the time, and
we had local dignitaries there, and we had the coaching staff and all the players. We had Sherry Basson of the Otters come up and say a few words, and the mayor and the county executive and the president, and But we showed a clip of Red Berenson talking about Mercyhurst, and when the pairings had been announced a few days before that. And he said, well, I really don't know too much about Mercyhurst. I'm not quite sure where Erie, Pennsylvania is, but I know very little about them. Well, he certainly knows a heck of a lot more about Mercyhurst after that wonderful game in 2001.
It was unbelievable. It was like we had won, everything. And, we were just going to the Division I tournament for the first time in school history.
That really put us on the map. First of all, we were on national TV on the Madison Square Garden Network. Right. Tons of people watched it. And it was a Sunday afternoon, and if you're a hockey fan back then, we were pretty much the only game around. It was a packed house at UConn. And then, to be one of 12 teams, to get in, and we got in because of the automatic bid, was great. And I can remember coming back to campus early that morning, and all being up in Baldwin Hall. A lot of people from the Booster Club and the players, and packed in there, watching on ESPN the selection show. And watching the bracket come up, and then boom, there's Mercyhurst, and there's video, on ESPN, there's video of us playing against Quinnipiac, and the game-winning goal, and the celebration on the bench, and the kids, and then they're interviewing me live, on ESPN, and then Red Berenson from Michigan, and it was incredible, and then Dan Cullen calling me from the bookstore, going, hey, everything's gone. Everything. We're getting calls, emails, people are coming. Everything that says Mercyhurst on it is sold out. We can't keep it because, we were in a region, and we went to Grand Rapids, and it was us, Wisconsin, Michigan, Providence, St. Cloud State, Michigan State. Those are the 6 teams that were there. You can get that stuff in Sears. Their clothing. You go to Michigan, you go to Sears and buy Michigan stuff. Nobody could find Mercyhurst stuff. So everybody was just fans. No one even knew Mercyhurst. We're just trying to get a hold of the bookstore to get a t-shirt, get a hat, get a sweatshirt. Completely sold out. He said it's never been like that. It was unbelievable. And that's the thing that I remember.
And that Michigan game, I tell you what, it was at the Van Andel Arena in Grand Rapids, and broadcasting that game was just it was a thrill.
Well, what we did, we scored first, which we had to do was 1-0, put some pressure on them.
We scored the first goal. It was Mike Muldoon who scored. It made it 1-0. I remember this game like it was yesterday.
They had a lot of chances. Peter Aubrey was huge. Peter Aubrey made like 65 saves, but we were winning most of the game, and a kid named Andy Hildebrandt, who went on to play for the Pittsburgh Penguins and some other teams, tied it with about 7 minutes to go, and then there was a kid by the name of Mike Camilleri.
Matter of fact, one of their players right now is lighting the lamp quite often in the National Hockey League playoffs for Montreal, Mike Camilleri.
He scored, and you could tell he was going to make it because he was an unbelievable player. He scored and tie game, and then it would go back and forth, and then Michigan. They were dominating in terms of shots on goal and things like that, but we were making our shots count. And we got to the third period, and we scored again. Jeff Gould, I believe, who scored, and we were winning 3-2 with 11 minutes to go. And there are pictures, hanging around in the athletic center and the ice center that still show the scoreboard: Mercyhurst 3, Michigan 2, with 11 minutes to go. It was unbelievable, and we just could not hang on. Michigan just had too much talent, and but it was unbelievable. There were probably 8,000 fans there. First time that we'd ever played in a crowd, like that. And everybody in that building was rooting for Mercyhurst.
Michigan State fans were rooting for us. North Dakota fans were there rooting for us. It was really awesome, and we got an ovation even though we lost by a goal to Michigan, who the Wolverines were heavily favored to defeat us. But Peter stood his ground, and the difference in the game, a couple of goals like 15 seconds apart that Michigan scored.
everybody, except obviously the Michigan fans. But the Michigan State people that were there, and St. Cloud State, who was playing in the next game, they were all cheering for Mercyhurst. It was unbelievable, and a lot of Mercyhurst people went to the game, and we ended up losing 4-3. Peter Aubrey was the goaltender, and he stood on his head pretty much. I mean, he was really the reason why it was that close of a game. I mean, he was amazing. He made saves that, were absolutely ridiculous. And we had enough offense and had enough talent to, stay in the game and, almost beat them. We almost held on. And I know there was one stretch where Michigan scored 2 goals in the span of like 15, 20 seconds. And that really, that broke our back. I mean, that killed us. But, we kept fighting and just couldn't get that tying goal. But like I said, 7,000-8,000 people in the stands, and 90% of them were rooting for us.
And back then, only 12 teams went. Not like today, where 16 teams went. We were part of the reason why the field got expanded from 12 to 16. 4 more teams got in because of the way Mercyhurst did things, today. But because there was a big uproar, how can Mercyhurst be in here and all that, blah, blah, blah. And, one of the things that Red Berenson said on ESPN was, we never heard of Mercyhurst College, and, we're not sure they even belong in this prestigious tournament coming through their league, and all these other good teams are being left out, and, do they really belong here? And, they should be in some kind of play-in game or something like the basketball does. But at the end of the game, he said in his press conference, hey, we know who Mercyhurst College is now, and they clearly belonged, and it was great. And we have, like the news media, I mean, we had articles from the New York Times and USA Today, and, we were, it was David and Goliath. We were the Gonzaga, back then. I mean, it was little Mercyhurst playing Michigan, in front of 10,000 people in the Van Andel Arena. We're supposed to not only just lose, we're supposed to get decimated, and really probably should have won that game.
Just like the team a decade prior, Mercyhurst had tasted greatness and yearned for more. They would win the MAC again in 2003 and go to the national tournament to play the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
Yeah, we got killed, but so did everybody else. Minnesota won their first national championship then. Thomas Vanek plays for the Buffalo Sabres, scored 5 goals against us in that game. A kid named Jordan Leopold, who plays for the Pittsburgh Penguins. A kid named Keith Ballard, who plays for the Florida Panthers. Trying to think, they had like 15 NHL first, second round picks. They beat us 9-2. Ferris State played them the next night. They beat Ferris State 7-2. Then they went on to the national championship, which was held in Buffalo. The only team that really gave them a run was Michigan. They beat Michigan in overtime. Vanek scored in overtime, and then they decimated UNH for the championship, University of New Hampshire, like 7-2. So I tell everybody we were the second best team in the nation that year, but they were a great team. We knew they were a great team, and again, we played in the Mariucci Arena in front of 17,000 fans. Their home ice. It's not like it was today where you go to regional sites. We played in their rink, and they were the real deal. And it was the men and the boys.
Their loss would not weigh heavy on their shoulders. The MAC would rename itself Atlantic Hockey, and the Lakers would win the league title in 2005. They went back to the national tournament to play Boston College, thanks in part to a defenseman leading all defensemen in scoring, Jamie Hunt.
That was, I mean, I tell you what, we came in there confident, and again, people knew who we were. We'd already played, as you know, against Michigan in 2001 and Minnesota in 2003, and in 2005, Boston College. Again, we were the 16 seed; they were the 1 seed.
Yeah, it was very similar to the Michigan game 4 years ago, or 4 years prior to that. We had some great offense. David Wrigley and Rich Hansen come to mind. T.J. Kemp was on defense. Frank was the goalie. We just had that kind of team that had tremendous ability. Made it through the conference postseason tournament, and got Boston College at a neutral site.
The interesting part about that was it was the NHL lockout year. So the game was live on ESPN. because they didn't have NHL hockey. So they were doing American Hockey League games. And so the game was live on ESPN. We had Bill Clement and Gary Thorne as the announcers, and all they talked about was, this little school from Erie, Pennsylvania, and we rented a band, so we have a band at the game in Worcester. We rented a band from St. John Shrewsbury High School, and we paid them $200, and they wore Mercyhurst jerseys, and they played during the game for us. Boston College obviously had their band. And it was terrific, and they had a kid in goal by the name of Corey Schneider, plays for the Vancouver Canucks. They had another kid by the name of Patrick Eves, who's playing for played for the Detroit Red Wings this year. A kid named Albert on defense, who was playing for someone, I think maybe Vancouver. Another big time program, but we lost 5-4.
And the game was very similar to Michigan. I mean, it went back and forth, and Mercyhurst led several times during the game, and like Michigan, just couldn't quite hang on.
Great game. We scored 11 seconds in, or 10 seconds in. David Wrigley scored. We had a great goaltending effort by a kid by the name of Mike Ella. Played great.
Unfortunately, we lost 5-4, but definitely made a name for ourselves again. We were hoping to be that first school from the conference to win first round and pull off the big upset in the first round, because with being in the lowest conference, I guess you could say, in Division I, we were always number 15 or 16 in terms of seeding, and it was a battle with us and the College Hockey America, which is now since folded. It was always the two teams that won those tournaments that were going to be the last two teams in terms of seeding, and so we play a big school in the first round, and just couldn't quite pull off that upset against Michigan or Boston College, and but Air Force a couple years later won a first round game, and then of course RIT this year making it to the Frozen Four, pulling off upsets against Denver and New Hampshire. Going back to those games against Mercyhurst and Boston College in particular, just making a name for ourselves, for our conference, and really showing all the other Division I schools not to take anybody from Atlantic Hockey, the MAC Hockey League, whatever you want to call it, lightly. The schools in our conference, I think, have a reason to thank Mercyhurst for making a name for the league, because Mercyhurst really held their own against Michigan and Boston College. It's unbelievable to play schools like that, and Mercyhurst nearly pulled off huge upsets against two big schools, and really made a name for the program and for the conference.
Well, you know what? We knew Jamie Hunt was going to be good. We never thought he was going to be that good.
Jamie was an offensive-minded defenseman. He really probably should have been a forward, but he just had such skating ability, just a knack for the game, that Rick decided to make him a defenseman.
But he was great. He was your typical power play defenseman who skated well, handled the puck, saw the ice great, made plays all the time. Just an absolute great player, great kid.
Well, unfortunately, our season came to an abrupt halt with a double overtime loss to Bentley in the conference semifinals. With another opportunity to possibly make it to the national tournament, but didn't quite get there, losing in double overtime to Bentley. But
only had him for 3 years, but he had, I like to say, 875,000 reasons why he left, because that's how much he signed for a 3-year deal with the 2-year deal with the Washington Capitals, and he got a $150,000 signing bonus.
A few months later, gets the call from the Washington Capitals, and he's the first player to actually suit up for an NHL game. Suited up for Washington, and it's just a great thing for our program.
And absolutely should go, because who knows if that'll be there next year. Right. you know what? It was Jamie's great. He's married to a Mercyhurst alum, and her dad is the general manager of the Pittsburgh Steelers.
We have a guy that, yeah, he only played one game, but still, one game is one game. He made it to the NHL, and he was knocking on the door his whole career, really, because he went right to the AHL, and he was knocking on the door to make it to the big time for a lot longer. But you could just tell just by watching him skate, watching his ability on the ice that he had a chance. Didn't know if he was going to make it, but he had a chance, and good for him and good for the program that he made it.
Throughout the years, through thick and thin, the Lakers have had a few truly great fans. These fans have been led by Sister Damien.
Sister Damien's the best. I mean, talk about folklore and legends. I mean, she's unbelievable, and I still feel like Sister Damien is walking on campus, and every time I make a turn, I think I'm going to bump into her. But an absolute great lady, one of a kind, unique as can be, and for all of us that had the privilege and the blessing of getting to know her and spending some time with her, we're truly blessed, because she was an unbelievable lady and a great character. Just a funny, laughing, just a great, loved her team. We could do no wrong. The other team could do no right. The other team was dirty and goons, and she would never see that in us. We were perfect, and she was quite the character. We had to replace the glass one year because she used to ring a cowbell, and she used to bang it off the end glass, and it was like a little bit of a divot from where she would hit this cowbell. But what a great lady.
As the men's team was doing great things, the women's program was blazing its own trail, backstopped by goaltender Desi Clark.
She was ridiculous. She will make it to the Hall of Fame. She better, anyway.
Her first game wasn't so good, but then after that she rolled, again, a player that was going to go play D3, and we were able to take her. We thought we could do great things with her. She had the challenge of replacing Tiffany Ribble and Amber Natali, two great goalies that were, again, the glue in net for us those first 4 years. And what happened with Tiff, right before Christmas, her last season, she was playing most of the games, obviously a season starter. And we were just playing shinny. She decided to play forward instead of goalie with her goalie skates on, and she fell funny and broke her ankle in 4 spots and was done for the year. And when we came back from Christmas, we were in the polls. We were, I think, number 6, going to Dartmouth, number 4. Everyone was excited, and Desi was going to play her first set of games, I think. And Dartmouth had a couple Olympians, a phenomenal team, and they beat us 11-1. Just about everything they shot went in, and you needed 2 goalies, so we got a girl from the lacrosse team that didn't know how to skate to play goal for us as a backup in case Desi got hurt. But she couldn't even skate. She was just in the equipment. Because we had such a short bench of players, none of the players could go in that. So Desi couldn't get pulled. She had to stay in there. And then the next night, the team really rebounded well. We lost 6-4, I think, and but a much better game. And it was a tough character test for Desi, and she came through. And that was really the start of her getting the ball as our starter. And then after that, she didn't look back. She was awesome. I think she beat Brown, who ended up being a Final Four team that year. We beat them at our place. And then she really started growing and emerging and getting better every year, getting confident, and ended up being our first All-American.
She was unbelievable. I mean, she was best goaltender that the women have had, by far, hands down. She made saves that she was like Aubrey for the women. I mean, she made saves that you still wonder how the heck she stopped that puck. I mean, it was unbelievable.
The Great Lakes League, I actually started with the 2 coaches that aren't at those schools anymore, and we just agreed to play the 3 teams, to have a league, play a schedule. And very uniquely, all games against other teams that we all had as common opponents, we would count those games in our league schedule as well. just something to make it fun and interesting for the players, and so you could have first, second, and third place team. So that's what we did, and then the next year we added another school, and then we went under that umbrella for a year or two, and then we were able to get College Hockey America to take us, and then even there, this process hasn't been easy in any way, because we added Quinnipiac, we had Niagara come in. You need 6 teams to get an automatic bid. We had Findlay in there, Wayne State. We just got Ohio State to agree to leave the WCHA and enter our league, which we would have had 6 teams. Things would have been so much easier, and it would have really established us. And 2 weeks after Ohio State verbally agreed, before any of the paperwork was done or signed, Findlay decided to drop hockey. And in doing so, set us back probably 10 years. We worked hard to get to that point. Findlay ends up dropping hockey. Ohio State automatically reneges on their situation. They go to the WCHA. They get back in the league. And now we went from 6 teams to 4 teams. And we're right back to where we were 2 years ago. And then Robert Morris was going to add hockey. We're excited they're coming into our league. But Quinnipiac gets into the ECAC. So they leave our league. We're right back from 5 to 4 teams, and it's been a constant struggle for us. And now Syracuse at it, so we get 5 teams. We're still looking for the 6th. Who knows what's going to happen? But again, in our typical fashion, we've survived. You know, people with recruiting, you know, are like, hey, don't go to that league. They won't have an automatic bid. They won't get to the NCAAs. Well, here we're sitting there 6 or 7 times in a row in the NCAAs, not needing the automatic bid, not expecting to ever need it, because we want to be good all the time.
And I remember especially the triple overtime game against Harvard, the first time that Mercyhurst made it to the tournament.
It was awesome. Other than the outcome, it was a nice sense of accomplishment for the players and the program, and it just helped legitimize us. We were knocking on the door. As you know, only 4 teams got into the NCAA tournament, which we had years where we were in the top 10 polls. We were among the best of the best, but cracking that top 4 was so tough, especially when the top 4 always had 2, 3 Olympians on them. And in women's hockey, an Olympian on your team is almost like an NHLer coming back to play men's hockey, because their skill level and their athletic ability is just that much better than most of the field usually. And increasing the field to 8 was just what we needed, and people always wondered, is Mercyhurst really that good? How good are they? You know, and we really proved to a lot of people that, hey, we're for real. And we got into the tournament. People thought Harvard would kill us, and taking that game to triple overtime was awesome, because it was a great hockey game. Certainly, Desi Clark was the hero of the game, even though we didn't win. But they had 3 Olympians, I believe, and in Nicole Corriero has the NCAA record for goals in a season. I think she scored 60, 70 goals that season, which is unbelievable. And it was just another character test for our players to prove they could belong. And in some cases, our players athletically were undermatched, but fought so hard with so much pride and passion to play Harvard toe-to-toe. And it was a great game, and I think for the fans, it definitely will go down in one of the greatest college hockey games, top 10 ever played. And certainly, I think till today, probably the best single performance by a goalie in the game against Harvard in our first NCAA bid, where she made, I think, 78 saves, which is an NCAA record. But certainly had a fantastic career for us.
By far, no questions asked, the best goaltender that we've had.
For the school, there's so many things that brings them. We're in the USA Today paper, which I'd love to know what their circulation is around the world. But once a week, every week, for the 30 or 25 weeks of the hockey season, Mercyhurst College is in there, again, amongst some of the best and most prestigious names in the world. And what that does for our admissions department, our fundraising capabilities, no one's ever, and that'd be a great project for someone, no one's ever put a dollar amount to that. But I think it has to be astronomical. The newspapers we get into because of that, the interviews our players do, the players that are in the Olympics or with their national teams. You know, we get exposure all around the world for the college. And those are things that I don't think Mercyhurst could afford to pay for, that are unique to us. And it helps bring in recruits, interest, and again, annual giving campaign dollars as well, because people are proud of that. They like seeing that, wow, our school is playing the best of the best, and right now they're the best. And I think that's just unbelievable that the school can get that type of marketing and exposure. And name recognition is slowly growing with us being able to have that type of success.
Valerie, other than Megan, Valerie's probably the second best player that we've had. Just her offensive ability was phenomenal. And, you know, Mercyhurst had never seen anything like Valerie.
She's a perfectionist and just was a phenomenal student. She got her master's here. She graduated in 3 years, then graduated with her master's in 1 year. Highly intelligent, very focused, very determined, and was a great player.
When she first came here, her freshman year, I mean, she had over 50 points her freshman year against, you know, all Division I competition. You know, CJ's in the Hall of Fame, and she scored, you know, I believe 70 points her first year, or close to that. But she was playing, you know, a few Division III schools. Valerie scored over 50 points her freshman year against nothing but Division I competition. And she was playing Wisconsin, she was playing against Minnesota, she was playing against St. Lawrence.
And clearly would have, again, all our records here if it wasn't for Megan coming, and we're glad Megan came. But it just goes to show how awesome Val was, and she won everything there was to win her first year.
Until Megan arrived, Mercyhurst had never seen anything like Valerie. Just a phenomenal player. And then she only got better when Megan showed up, and you know, you have those two on the same line, I mean, forget about it. You just might as well tack up another one on the scoreboard, because they were going to score.
Again, I believe we lost Teresa Marquez.
Great player. She actually transferred from Niagara. So we only had her for a couple seasons, but in terms of offensive ability, I mean, she was fantastic.
And in walks Valerie Chouinard as a freshman, who was maybe the next generation of Teresa.
You know, Valerie was just fantastic player.
You know, it was great watching Val play, because she was a skilled player that was powerful and intense and played with the passion. I love our players to play with. She kept herself in phenomenal shape and condition.
And she's another one that definitely deserves to make it to the Hall of Fame too, because like I said, other than Megan, if Megan never played a game here at Mercyhurst, we'd be talking about Valerie Chouinard like we do with Megan.
Again, it just kind of went that way with our goaltending. Laura was waiting to play, and I remember it extremely well. We were in a tournament in UNH, and we lost a close game to Dartmouth the night before. And Desi was okay, but not great for one of the rare times. And I was trying to feel out Laura's confidence and her mental ability to play what we felt was a must-win game the next day against UNH in their own building, which is an Olympic-sized rink. They were always offensively very threatening. And I asked Laura, point out and say, hey, if you play tomorrow, can you win? And she said, creative adjective, yes, you know. And just the confidence she answered me with, I knew she was ready to go. And not only did she win, but she pitched a shutout. It was one of the rarest times UNH has been shut out at home. And that let us know, like, hey, we got a pretty good goalie here. And again, not a lot of teams recruited Laura. She wasn't even on scholarship here her first couple of years. And you know, once we saw that, we obviously had a dogfight. And they both played down the stretch, and then we knew what was nice was we got another great goalie here, and Laura kind of took the reins.
There has never been a talent, men or women, like Megan that has stepped foot on this campus. I mean, just remarkable what she does. She's so fast. I mean, she has speed that is unheard of. She skates circles around, 95% of the competition. Her shot is amazing. Her passing is amazing. She plays defense. I mean, I don't know how the coaching staff got her to come here.
Well, we worked hard on Meg for 2 years, and I think ultimately, actually, I just spent some nice time with her family. They honored her in her hometown of Ruthven, Ontario, Megan Augusta Day, and they named a street after her. She got so many proclamations from different dignitaries, and the big thing with her and her family is they wanted her to go to a place where they really trusted the coaches and they believed in them. And fortunately, I was able to make that impression on them, and they felt really comfortable with me. They liked the size of the school, the small classroom sizes, the help she'd be able to get, and they liked the fact that it was close to home. Her parents loved seeing her play. They're a very close-knit family, and she can get home occasionally. They could come here occasionally and see a lot of her games. And I think all those things mixed together, along with the fact that we stayed on her for the 2 years, and I think they just really got to the point where they trusted our abilities. They knew if Megan came here, we were going to take great care of her. But oftentimes at some other schools, they do get great players and Olympians, but the coaching staff maybe gives them too much latitude to do whatever they want, or to not push them hard enough so they keep improving. Megan has a dream to try to be one of the best players in the world, and we talked to her that we're going to make sure she doesn't get complacent, that she keeps improving. We're going to push her. There's going to be days she doesn't want to hear things that we're going to tell her how it is, so she can keep moving forward and accomplish all her goals.
But my Lord, she's ridiculous. And when Mike first said that we have Megan Augusta coming to Mercyhurst, we're like, wow, how'd you pull that off? And is she really gonna live up to the hype? And and not only has she lived up to the hype, but I think she's exceeded expectations in terms of what she's accomplished. I mean,
this year, I think you kind of saw we were in the right direction. 4 years ago in Italy, she was pretty much a fourth-line role player on the Canadian Olympic team. And over the 3 years here, she's really grown, she's matured, she's become an elite athlete, and now she's the MVP of the Olympics, proven she is one of the best of the best. And the progress she made in that time of period is phenomenal. And a lot of credit goes to her and her passion and her drive. But I think clearly, we get some credit for that too, with our coaching ability, the players she's played with, our program, and even academically, she's flourishing. She's in a major she loves, and really on path to accomplishing all her goals, which that's what this process is all about. So,
the name recognition alone has brought, a huge fan base for the women's hockey program now, just by name alone. And and then people come and see her play, and oh man, I mean, how did she come here? But obviously, the women's program, the school is thankful she did.
With these great players, the women's hockey team was voted by the USA Today to be the #1 team in the nation.
But we did so much, and what was so exciting was that team. And again, I guess it was kind of happy days in the sense you had a senior class of really colorful character players that have accomplished a lot and grew a lot as people and overcame a lot. But they played with the chip on their shoulder, and they wanted to make a name for Mercyhurst, and they wanted to be the best of the best. And headed by our captain, Julia Kalica, that team played hard and had something to prove. And we had such a great season. And the only difficult thing was we finished up, and there's not much we could do about it with how the schedule shook out. But we finished up with our league opponents for the last 2 months that we had great success over. And we were beating them pretty handily. And our players almost had a false sense of security. They knew we were good, we knew what was coming and how hard we had to work, but we haven't been in a lot of battles and down the stretch. And plus having Megan as a freshman, I think a lot of players were like, well, if the game gets close, Megan will just get a puck and bury it. The tough thing was on that particular night, we had a lot of chances. The crowd was phenomenal. Sellout crowd, probably the best crowd I've seen since Bemidji.
1,800 fans packing a 1,200 seat rink, you know? I mean, it was...
And it was bigger than that. It was phenomenal. There was so much hype. People were making plans to go to Lake Placid on buses the next weekend.
We really, you know, with Augusta on the team and Valerie Chouinard and, you know, girls like that, you know, we thought, hey, we're going to make it to the Frozen Four for the first time in history.
And there was so much support and excitement in the city and on campus. And I feel, unfortunately, that one stings because I think we blew it, and it was too bad.
Just heartbreaking. I mean, you know, you think you have it, and to lose like that with all the talent on that team, you know, being #1 in the country for a part of the season, you know, you think you have it wrapped up, and you just let it slip away.
That anything can happen in the games, and you know, you just felt like you let a lot of people down. And but on the flip side of that, it wasn't anyone's fault. What happened in the game, we went up 2-0, and we had chances to blow it open. Their goalie made some big saves. And then they were a very veteran, battle-tested team with a lot of scars through battling down the stretch in some really hard-fought matches. And we gave them a goal at the end of the second period, I think. That kind of gave them hope, where they're like, hey, 2-1, anything can happen, let's go get it. And when they came out and they scored in the third, again, we hit post, we missed chances. We missed a 3-on-0 where we didn't even get a shot off. Crazy things started happening, and I think for the first time all season, our players who were filled with confidence might have been like, uh-oh, you know, like this isn't good. And once we got in overtime, obviously anything can happen. And our players played well, but I think unfortunately, you know, we got in a situation where we didn't get tested down the stretch. We should have blew the game open, and we didn't. We let a very good team hang around. And then once it got close, anything can happen. And unfortunately for us, the worst thing possible, you know, happened. And our players were stunned.
That was about as heartbreaking a loss as you can come up with.
The team would pick itself up and return to face Minnesota Duluth in the NCAA tournament the following year, with similar results. It would not be until 2008 that the team would make the final push and get to the national championship game, where they would play Wisconsin.
Yeah, we went in there excited, thinking, you know, again, hey, this is our time to shine. And we didn't feel the WCHA teams gave us any respect. Probably a coach's dream. Jen Schulis, a girl I like from Erie, we recruited her, plays for Minnesota. And for some reason, the morning of the game bashed us in the paper to Minnesota, Erie and our school and our team. And you know, from a coach's end, it was, you know, we didn't need any more motivation. We were ready to play, but it was all we needed. And we came out. Our girls played with that chip on their shoulder again. We jumped out to a 5-1 lead, and we're playing awesome. And the only thing where we almost let it slip away was we had some key injuries during the game that we ended up playing the final period with 3D. They had a great team and a great power play. We managed through the first 2 periods not to get into penalty trouble, and a little fatigue set in. Having some of those injuries, you know, wore us down even more. That we started taking penalties in the 3rd period, and they scored and got a lot of momentum off of it, and they started coming, and it was really exciting for the fans because, you know, especially the people watching at home, if they were watching on the internet, on one of those scenarios where you don't see the game, you just get the recaps. You know, it was like 5-2, 5-3, and then we kept taking penalties. We might have took 6-7 penalties in the 3rd period that we were killing 5-on-3s. They'd pull their goalie, make it a 6-on-3, they'd score. So we were hanging on for dear life, but it just added to the excitement and intrigue. We won the game. Obviously, another big moment in the program's history, getting to that final game. But an amazing moment for Mercyhurst College. You're in Boston. You're getting tons of exposure, tons of press. You beat a Big Ten school on center stage. And again, I wish someone could total up, marketing dollars, what that does for Mercyhurst College or admissions or those types of things. But an amazing moment for everyone to be part of. And the game against Wisconsin, I thought Vetter played great in goal for them. The first period, we played very well. We outplayed them. She made 3 huge saves to keep the game at 0. And then as they scored in the second period, things, kind of changed. I think their deeper bench took over. They had 4 Olympians on their team. We had 1. But you saw kind of the wind coming out of our sails. We started having fatigue set in. They started playing with greater energy, sensing, the momentum's changing. And then we just couldn't stop the bleeding. They opened the floodgates. They got stronger as the game went on. We didn't. And, they were the better team that day. I think if we could have got one past better early, maybe it would have been different. But, it was obviously a great season, just disappointing, with how that.
And then the team.
Sure.
The game that we played against Wisconsin for the national championship, the goaltender for Wisconsin, Jessie Vetter, nobody scored on her. So, we outshot them. We outshot them that game and lost 5-0. But nobody scored on that girl. So, we gave it everything we had. We just couldn't. For all intents and purposes, we played as well, if not better, than Wisconsin did. But the goaltending was the difference.
In 2010, following the 5-0 loss to Wisconsin in the national championship, the team would lose Megan Augusta for the season as she went to play for Team Canada in the Vancouver Olympics. While she was winning gold, the Lakers would have a lot to prove without their superstar.
The truth was, people in our league expected to win our league. Like they were actually saying, hey, finally, without Augusta and Chouinard and McMeekin, the league's up for grabs. And they would say this very matter of fact around me or my coaches on the road. And it was something that, to be honest with you, pissed us off, because we're like, well, what exactly are they saying? They got to be saying they don't think we're going to be good because those people are gone. But don't they realize we're always good? Like, we just work hard and we win. And those were things we took back to the players, and what was nice to see is they responded well to that. That bothered them as much as it bothered us. It was a battle cry for this year that, hey, people don't think we're good. We're going to show them how good we were. And we had happen exactly what you had to have happen. We had people step up. Hill elevated her game. Our D played pretty well for us. Bennis, Scanzano, Bram, Jess Jones all stepped up for us. And that's exactly what you needed. You needed those players to say, you know what, we love Meg, we want her back, but in the meantime, we're not planning to lose to anybody. And they did a great job of taking on that challenge. And, it was great for us because, we send a message pretty loud and clear that, whoever puts on our jersey, they're going to compete. We're not going to roll over. And, we're planning on having a lot of success for a lot of years.
That was the game against Cornell, the worst game that they played all season. Their passing was off. Everything was off. It was just off. They had not played a game like that all season long.
Well, a couple things could have happened. You never really know. The bottom line is we did not play well in the game against Cornell, and Cornell was playing the underdog role we're used to playing. They played hard, they played fearless, they had nothing to lose, and they played every shift like it was the last shift because they were afraid not to. And in doing so, they gave themselves an opportunity to win, and they did. So I give them tons of credit. They're a very good team. They did exactly what they had to do to win. Unfortunately for us, again, we were a pretty young team. We only had one senior, and we had a handful of players just not perform well. A few didn't handle the pressure well. A few tried too hard. When the game was close, they kind of got off our game plan, tried to do things all by themselves, maybe out of a little panic or over exuberance of feeling like, wow, we got to do more, we got to get this done. And a few players just, played great all year and just didn't have a good game, and it happens sometimes. I think that's always a fear. You hear often, well, if only we lost one down the stretch. I don't think any coach ever wants to lose a game. But what losing does sometimes, it refocuses, it recenters you, it refocuses on the little details. And when you're having plenty of success, you get comfortable, and then when things get tough, sometimes panic sets in if you're not used to that situation.
A Mercyhurst Laker would rise above the rest to win the Patty Kazmar Award for Best Player in Women's Hockey, Vicky Bendis.
Unbelievable. I saw her. She actually came to my hockey school. I kid her that anytime she wants to tell anyone she's as good as she is, because my hockey school helped attendance numbers. But she's so gifted. And one of the two things people missed on her that didn't recruit her was they thought because she was so tiny, which if you ever saw her off ice, she looks like she's 8, 9 years old. She is really tiny. They didn't think she could play at this level with the size of the girls and the pace of the game, and they sold her short. And that's something we never did. We believed in her. We knew what she was capable of, and we're so glad we took her. The other thing, though, is Vicky's abilities are really noticed when she can play with better players that understand the game. And a lot of times at the level she played, unless you really watched her, she may not be as noticeable as other players that are flashier or run over people without people around her to complement her smarts and intelligence. And that's something that we were able to see and notice. And then you put her with the right players and you really see how well she creates out there and what she can do, and her ability to be shifty and make plays and win hockey games.
In 2010, Mercyhurst Hockey would return to where it started, Tullio Arena, where Erie, Pennsylvania is hosting the Frozen Four in women's hockey.
It's a huge undertaking. The one unfortunate thing is we can't have it here on campus. With the size of our facility, it's just too bad that we can't, if we're fortunate enough to make the Final Four, we're going to be playing in a different building just like the other teams. And we lose that amazing crowd atmosphere where we're a real difficult rink to play in. Unless we're fortunate enough to play in the Final Four downtown and we have 6,000 fans pack the place. Then I think that'd be pretty unique, and that's the challenge. We want to try to get to that. So right now, headed with Aaron Kemp and Joe Kimball, they have a committee. They're trying to set up anything from hotels, places to eat, the building itself, locker rooms. There's so many things that go into it. And then we also want to do some unique things with the Chamber of Commerce. So people coming to Erie for the first time have fun. This is a very big gamble for the committee because it's been in Boston, it's been in Minnesota, it's been in major markets where you may have sections of town where there's 20 bars around the hotel, or there's all kinds of activities in areas, and if the teams are going to be staying on Peach Street and the rinks downtown, I think one of the things we have to do is there's great things in Erie. We got to figure out the best way of showcasing those places, the restaurants, make it easy for the people, because in a lot of the other places they can walk from place to place and stuff like that, or take the subway, get off it right there. We want to blow their minds when they come to Erie with an experience they haven't seen before, where they're just totally in awe of how organized things were, how well run they were, how beautiful the city was, and how many fun, interesting things in a very convenient way they can get to and do. And that's the challenge, for Aaron and the group to see how we could throw that all together.
There's been good players on every team we've had. And maybe in that 3 or 4 years in that era, they were the best players for us, So it's really hard to talk about everybody, But I think you hit some of the, Gary Bowles was big in the era he was in, Scott Burfoot was big, and Troy Winch in the areas those guys were in. You talk about Peter Aubrey, what he did. You talk about the Louis Goulet. I think you've really hit on, the key guys that have been in there.
There's so many. I mean, one of the things that for me is sitting back is just, it's very rewarding seeing some of the players and some of the teams accomplish what they've accomplished. And overcome what they've overcome, I'm just so prideful of what they've helped us do, because no one thought we could do any of this. Even the administration didn't think we could beat the teams on a consistent level that we're beaten in the past when we started this. None of the outside teams know how are we doing what we're doing and how do we keep doing it. So those things give me great pride that we haven't just had one good year. We've done a lot of amazing things with great people, from the assistant coaches I've had, the administration's help, the students, the faculty, and certainly our players. And it's just been a great ride.
A lady who's worked here for probably 10, 12 years had never been to see a women's game. She picked that game to come, obviously a good one to watch, and she said, I'm coming back. You're going to see me a lot more next year. I really enjoyed it. I thought it was fun. And we have the same thing happen on the men's side too. They never, I mean, I've been told by hockey enthusiasts who've seen our college team, men's college team play, and go downtown to watch the Otters and whatever, who enjoy it better here, who enjoy the hockey better. They think it's a better brand of hockey.
It's something about this place. I mean, my dad started here in '86, and he finally supposedly retired last year, but he's still around. I mean, he still does the PA, and he does stuff for the basketball team and the football team and everything else. So it's just a place that it just draws you back. There's something about it, and as you'll probably find out when you graduate. I mean, it's you may, at the time when you're taking finals and stuff, this is probably the last place you want to be, but 3, 4, 5 years down the road, dang, I really miss Mercyhurst, and there's just something about it that just draws you back.
We hail our college alma mater, the hearse that's built upon the hill, with love for all she has taught us, traditions that we carry still. Old Maid stands for